Welcome to We Don't Have Cookies with your host, Jason Marshall.
Hey everybody, thanks for downloading the show. Joining me right off the bat is an MMA fighter so legendary that he's a charter member of the UFC Hall of Fame. He's the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock. How you doing?
Good, man. Hey, appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's nice to have you here. How did you get the nickname the world's most dangerous man?
Well, it's a good question because I know during my time that you're not allowed to give yourself your nickname. You know what I mean? You have to earn a nickname. And I know for a long time I was named Ken the Rock Shamrock when I was first fighting in the UFC because of my chiseled body and the rock hard determination. During that time, they did this show and they were going through ABC or I can't remember which network it was. It was one of the big networks that were doing the special on the world's most dangerous animal, the world's most dangerous food, the world's most dangerous place, you know, so on and so on, and the world's most dangerous man. At the time, I had been champion over in Japan and the UFC. And so when they were doing the show, I was a little bit apprehensive because they came to me and said, hey, we want to do a piece on you as the world's most dangerous man. At first, I was like, because the UFC at the time, we were being hammered for being these barbaric animals with the way that the fights were because people didn't understand it yet. So really in my mind, I was thinking, is this going to be a good piece or a bad piece? And so I said, well, it depends on how you guys are actually going to go after this thing. And I said, no, man, we just want to show people who you are as a person behind the scenes. And I said, yeah, for sure. Because not many people got to know who we were as fighters back then. So I remember they did this piece of me standing there and they showed this shadow. It was a big old shadow. And they showed the shoes and they went up on the shadow from the big shoes that I had put on the mat. And it was my kid who was about 5 years old at the time. He had big boxing gloves on and he had stepped into my shoes and they showed his shadow and made it look like a giant. Mm-hmm. And so when they panned down off of the shadow onto him, it was a little kid and he came out of the ring and started punching me. And we were wrestling and playing and it showed the actual kinder side of me and who I was as a person. And that's where my nickname came from because after that piece came out, it was the world's most dangerous things and people. And I got named the world's most dangerous man from that show, and it stuck with me ever since.
Dude, I love that story. That's awesome. This is supposed to be a comedy show, but I got a serious question just out of my own curiosity. When MMA first started, it was more of a clash of styles instead of a fight between two well-rounded fighters. Like back in the day, you might have a wrestler against a boxer or a judo player versus a sumo. As a competitor, which way did you prefer it?
I loved the earlier days where there was no gloves and there was competitors and styles because it really gave people something to actually get behind. Like you were a wrestler or a boxer, you got to get behind a guy. And without the gloves, you were able to do submissions and that you didn't have to worry about a guy swinging from the ground all the way up like a haymaker because if he missed, he'd break his hand. So what they did with the gloves is they took away the purity of the submission and the actual precision of striking. Now anybody could throw a big old haymaker and knock somebody out. Punch doesn't have to land in the soft spot or the sweet spot. It can land anywhere in the head and you can knock them out and not get hurt. So to me, they took away a lot of the fantastic abilities that these fighters had and let these guys that were just brawlers. And by putting on those gloves, it took away the chokes and the heel hooks and the things that were very strategic in placing your hands and your arms somewhere in order to perform the submission. And they took all of that away when they added gloves. You can't get a choke on anybody because it's too big. You can't, do leg locks because the glove, you can't fit in the slide on the Achilles. And so it just really messed up a lot of the guys who really were excellent at submissions.
Well, I'm sure you got a lot of funny experiences while on the road with MMA and pro wrestling. But have you ever had any funny moments inside the cage during a fight?
Well, there's one that I thought was funny because prior to the fight, there was comments about being in Royce's guard and how that if he kept me there too long, I might have to hammer him with something other than my hips. And so some of that stuff got around a little bit. And so during the fight, I was hitting him a little bit. My father, because it was the first time I fought him, it was a very, very slow fight. my father screamed out, "What are you going to do? Kiss him?" And it was almost like everybody just stopped cheering when he said it, right? It was almost that perfect timing. And so I kind of looked up in the middle of the fight as I was in Hoyce's guard, and I looked over at him and I was like, did he just say that? Like out loud. And Hoyce says in my ear, he goes, "Please don't." I turned and looked at him and I hit him and I said, "There's your kiss."
Out of all the people to yell at the crowd.
Yeah, right. And it was like unbelievable because it's almost like in between the crowd where it just went quiet for a split second and he yells it out. It was like, did he just say that? And Hoyce heard it too because Hoyce says, "Please don't."
That's awesome.
Yeah. I said, "Don't worry, brother. I ain't here for that."
Well, you're also an instructor too. And I saw something on TV a few days ago. We had a lot of snow here where I live. And they were showing school closings at the bottom of the screen. Included in the school closings was Stop Shoplifting School Program. Apparently that's something the court sentences shoplifters to.
It sounds like they're promoting it.
How would you teach that class?
You mean to keep them from shoplifting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would teach the actual people at the store that when they actually catch them is to break one finger. It's like, let me have your finger and snap. That's one. Let's not do it again. Next time we'll have to do another one. They walk around with 5 fingers broken. You know, they've got a problem.
If you see somebody with a full cast on their hand, you know they're in some trouble when they walk in.
Yeah, then you're going, okay, maybe we got to do something else with this guy. Maybe we should start doing something with psychology. We should talk to him now.
You'll have to do some Pavlovian methods where...
Right, give him a hug. Give him a hug, tell you love him, and don't do it again.
I'm not sure how much you want to get into this, but I had Dan Severn on the podcast a few months ago, and he had a lot of things to say about you.
I'm sure he did.
And it kind of came out of the blue. We were talking about his transition in from UFC to the WWE, and you came up, and I was talking about how you seemed like the perfect wrestler. Like you were saying earlier with their chiseled physique, that's why they used to call you The Rock. You just seemed tailor-made for pro wrestling.
That probably pissed him off.
That led us down a long path. I think it might have been 10 minutes where he talked.
Yeah, and I'm sure he started off with me being a cheater and steroids. I'm sure that he had a lot to say about that because anybody that, for whatever reason, can't succeed against somebody, they're going to try to find something they can blame it on.
Yeah, that definitely came up. I do remember that.
It's sad.
How far back does your rivalry with him go outside of the cage? Because just by talking to him, it seemed like it had to be for a while.
I think he was upset because he felt like he should have got the recognition that I got. You know, he felt like he was better than me. And the reality of it is the guy was not even close to me. I mean, the only reason why he was even able to even get a draw with me when we did that one fight was because I was hurt. I had a cracked rib and a broken nose. And my knee, I had a lateral meniscus tear in my knee, which was causing me a lot of problems. Fact is, later on, as you can see, my skills really diminished because I wasn't able to shoot or get to the ground very well. So it really hurt me, even later in my career. But I think he feels like all the recognition that I got and all the credit that I got, he felt like that was his.
I can see that. Like, you built your name on top of fighting with him or something like that.
Yeah, like he had his opportunities.
Not that I agree with him. I'm just saying that I can kind of see where you would come from with that.
Yeah, I get it too. I mean, I see where he's coming from too. I just think he's handling it wrong. I mean, I really do. I think that, he did some tremendous stuff in the UFC. I mean, we won 2 Ultimates. My goodness. Yeah. I mean, the guy was incredible. There's no question. The problem is he couldn't get past me. And it was only because my skills and stuff were much more advanced than his. I'd been doing it longer. And so it's like Boss Root. He came in and I was able to beat him twice. Who knows what would have happened if those guys would have gotten more skill and we would have fought. Maybe it would have been a better fight and maybe they would have won, but nobody knows that. But the way that just like Boss Root, you don't see him going around putting me down because he lost to me twice.
Yeah, that's true.
And so now you got Severn going around and complaining, and he even got a draw out of me, when we had that one draw and he supposedly got the win, which was a horrible fight. But, so, I mean, he actually got a gift handed to him because I was hurt. So he was able to actually get a win from that. And I don't know why he doesn't just stay on that. Like, he won the second fight.
Yeah, that looks like what he would hang his hat on, is he
Right.
walked away on that second fight the winner.
Yes. He got the belt.
Yeah. I do an episode of the podcast. It's a comedy-based court show, sort of like the People's Court, but with some humor thrown in. And he's the bailiff on the episodes that I do. The episodes are called Martial Law.
Bailiff, whack your PP.
Would you?
Not too hard. You'll go blind.
Would you ever do an episode of Martial Law with him?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I'll see if I can work that out. I don't know if, he just seems kind of upset. So I'm hoping we can make it humorous.
He's upset. I don't understand, man. I know he wants to fight me again too. And I'm thinking, man, we're two old men.
He did bring that up too.
Yeah. He's like, he thinks I'm afraid of him. Like, you don't want to fight me. And I'm like, dude, we're old. I mean, come on.
I gotta be honest, as a fan of both of you guys, I would like to see that, but that's
I would love to do it. The problem is getting a respectable company to pick it up. That's the same thing I told him. I said, dude, no one wants to see us fight. Yes, there are some fans out there to do, but there's no UFC, there's no Bellator, there's nobody that's a respectable company that would pay us to fight.
Yeah, that's a shame too, because like I said, I would like to see it, but you're 100% right. Unfortunately, it wouldn't.
Yeah, and why would you go in there and want to do something like that unless you're going to get paid?
Right. Yeah, you don't want to just go on a public access TV because you just want to fight.
It's not about egos. I mean, we've all done everything we possibly could do up to this point, and now if we get back in the ring, it's got to make sense.
Right. And he has had a good career. He's got 70 wins under his belt. I mean, that's really respectable. I'd just walk away with that.
Listen, the guy is tremendous. I've never doubted his ability. It's just that when he was around me and when we had our time, I was much better than him at the time. And as time goes, everybody catches up. Yeah. But unfortunately, during that time, my skill sets were just much, much better than his.
Well, I kind of talked about this earlier, but something that both of you guys have in common was going from UFC to pro wrestling in the WWF. Is that something you always wanted to do, or did it occur to you because they approached you about it?
Well, actually, it was something that I watched early with my dad, with Pat Patterson, Moondog Mayne during those times. You know, for me, I really didn't have much of an interest in it. Mm-hmm. I just felt like where I was at and all the accomplishments that I had done up to that point would not fit. But as I started to have to make decisions because the no holds barred world couldn't pay me what I needed, I had to go out and do something else. And so I didn't know what to do. And then my father made some suggestions about pro wrestling. He said, man, you could take that and go do pro wrestling and do all those things you do in the real fight. And I said, you know what? That's interesting. So I went out and found a promoter, a guy that would help me get my feet in the door and start talking to people and see what we could, bring in. Because I couldn't, at the time, I couldn't make any money in the mixed martial arts world. UFC was, having a very, very hard time. And the Pankers organization was pretty much down. So I had to make a decision on, hey, I can't keep doing this unless I could pay my bills, take care of my family. So we started putting out feelers to, Baba and Inoki and WCW and WWF. And WWF came back right away. Vince called me right away. I mean, it was quick. And said, hey, we'd love to bring you in and talk to you and see if we can't get something done. And I said, okay, sure. So they were the first ones that were aggressively coming after me. The other three that I put a feeler out for, none of them even reached out after we put our feelers out.
Did your dad ever heckle you during a wrestling match?
My dad heckled me all the time. Yeah, my dad heckled me all the time, man. He'd always tell me I was fat, punch me in the stomach, and tell me to look up, and then he'd hit me in the belly. So, yeah, he was always doing stuff to try to make sure that I was alert.
You were part of one of the most iconic WrestleManias of all time, WrestleMania 13, with Bret Hart and Steve Austin. That was one of my favorite matches. A lot of people out there who were wrestling fans, that was one of theirs too. You had a really good career in the WWE.
The accomplishments that I was able to do during that time was probably much faster than anybody that's ever been in pro wrestling. I went within 1 year, I was already a household name. It didn't take me long to, get the Rookie of the Year and King of the Ring and a tag team title, Intercontinental title. I mean, it was just the stuff I accomplished in 2.5 years was probably faster than anybody that's ever went into the pro wrestling world.
Yeah.
And even to this day, my prints, my imprint is still on the WWE.
Yeah, because back then, I'm a lifelong wrestling fan. I know this is a comedy show, guys, so don't get upset because we're talking too much about
right.
this. But when I used to watch growing up, you had to say I quit. And then you came along and people were tapping out. And they do that, like you said, to this day. And the only person that was even close to your trajectory had to be Kurt Angle.
Or Bret Hart.
Well, I mean, coming in as an outsider.
Gotcha.
From a
right.
I guess the only way to put it is a legitimate sport into doing this and transitioning. It was incredible.
Well, think about this. You got two guys that were legitimately coming in as shooters, myself and Kurt Angle. And if you're talking about somebody who is iconic, isn't being iconic when people who are legitimate badasses or legitimate world champions or legitimate All-Americans and they copy you? They literally take what you brought in and use it as their own. Yeah. I mean, how much more can you say about, somebody actually being having an imprint on an organization?
Yeah, that's very true. I didn't really think about that till you brought it up. I know I have in the past, but he did come in with your finishing move and everything.
And he was a legitimate Olympic wrestler. I mean, he was a legitimate guy. And then you see all the other things going on now with arm bars and knee bars and heel hooks and toe holds. None of that was there before me.
Yeah, that's very true. Into the comedy part of this, one of the most bizarre things I may have seen in wrestling, it didn't actually turn into something bizarre. I just heard a backstage rumor about it. After you were there for a while, they brought in your real-life girlfriend to play the role of your little sister. And I always thought that was kind of strange.
It was different. It was different. The thing is, dude, it's like we would be walking out back, right? And when we go outside, when the show was over, and there was a bunch of people standing there wanting autographs as you're driving out. Mm-hmm. I remember there was a few times where I reached over and I started French kissing her. Everybody was like, "Oh, he's kissing his sister." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna learn a lot more."
That was going to be my question: is how did that affect your real life? Because if you go out to eat, you're on national TV. There's millions of people watching you, and you're having a romantic dinner with your sister. I guess that had to really get a lot of weird looks your way.
Well, the thing is, though, is that because of what we were doing, I had to be careful because I have 3 kids and one was on the way and I had been separated, right? So I had to be very careful all the way up until we started to actually get away from it. Every now and then I'd do something that was funny, but not to the media or to the masses.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't put my kids in that spot because they had to go to school. And they don't know that it's not real. And so the kids would be saying, your dad is kissing your sister. And I actually had a son named Ryan Shamrock. That's my oldest boy.
Oh, wow. And coincidentally for listeners, that's the name they gave his girlfriend on the WWE. So.
Yeah, she was playing my sister. So I started, once that we started really going and the angle started taking off, I really kept it hidden, really well. But before that, it was kind of funny. And so we would play with it a little bit, but then it just started to take off. And she started getting, a lot of credit with being, Ryan Shamrock. And so then we had to, when we were driving out, we couldn't do that anymore because there was a lot of cameras, people taking pictures now. And so we really had to be careful to that we didn't want to hurt, especially my kids and my family, because of the things that people would say because they would think it was real.
And there was a backstage rumor that this was supposed to turn into some weird incestual storyline. Is that true?
Yeah, actually, they pitched an idea to go down as the reason why I was running around trying to save her and beating people up for her. Not just because she was my sister, it was because I was in love with her.
Oh my God.
I was like, I can't do that. And I remember that, I started getting heat for that because I wouldn't do it. I said that's something that my family would not be able to get over, especially with my kids in school and stuff being, I think they were 5, 8, 10 at the time. Oh yeah, that wouldn't have been well. They couldn't have gone to school without getting into fights if I would have done that.
If you could do a fight with anybody, either a match in the WWE or an actual fight in the UFC, who would it be with and why?
I would say in the UFC, I would want the rematch with Hoist with the way that the last one ended. I thought that was sick. That he even got the win on that. I just don't know how you cannot, make that fight happen again with the way that happened. And I think in pro wrestling, there's a lot of guys that I wish I would have had an opportunity. Goldberg is one. I would have loved to have had a match with him. Kurt Angle, I would love to be able to have that ankle lock match. Yeah. The one that, we never got to have. And then I think the next one would definitely be one to finish the Rock trilogy. We never got to finish the story with me and him. And then I think the other one that I think that I would love to have, whether it was in MMA or pro wrestling, would be Brock Lesnar.
Well, before we go, you recently started your own podcast called The World's Most Dangerous Podcast. What can people expect to hear on your show?
I tell you, I was really excited about doing it. Me and Des Woodruff, when we first got together and we started thinking about the podcast, the one thing we knew was there was a lot of them out there. And how do we start a podcast and how do we keep what we are as a person, him as a businessman, entrepreneur, and me as the world's most dangerous man, the fighter, the world champion? How do we mix this podcast for people to be able to get a little bit of both of us? And so we thought, we got to figure out a name, and then we've got to figure out what kind of content, it can't just be MMA because everybody's doing it. We came up with the World's Most Dangerous Podcast. We came up with the name. We got that. And then we said, okay, now we got to stick to it. We have to stick to being dangerous on our podcast. We got to talk about things that nobody else will talk about or want to talk about. And so we started blending in politics, started blending in different things that was going on in the world today, whether it was the shootings of people being killed, whether it was bomb fires, presidents, whatever it was. We wanted to talk about the things going on now that were relevant to the world. And at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we also included stuff that was going on in the MMA world, the fight world, the sports world, staying to some of the roots that I came from. And then we had to go, we also need to be able to go to where Des comes from, which is the entrepreneurial world, where we got to blend in some business opportunities with our podcast. So we came up with the Lion's Cage, where people come in. It's like the Shark Tank, except it's done on a podcast where people come in and they pitch their ideas to us through the Twitter. And we look at it, we poke holes in it, we give them ideas and other ways to try to make it grow or get it started from our opinions and where we stand at, what we look at, because I've been through a lot of business in the world of professional fighting. Des has been through it in the business world. And so we're blending them together, watching people come and pitch ideas to us. And, since we've done that, we're involved in 2 or 3 different businesses now, being able to help promote these businesses into some lucrative income from these guys. So we've been able to do a great job with that. So our podcast, we really wanted to make sure that we emphasized the things that are going on today, sports and business and entrepreneurialism. And we've done a great job at that point. So that's kind of what we do. We really do. We just take things that we think are important to the world today. We talk about them, and we also blend in sports and entrepreneurial business. It's the, dangerouspodcast.com. Check it out.
Sounds great. Ken, I want to thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
I've been trying to write a song about procrastination since 1995. Never seem to get past the second line. But this time I'm blowing by, and it ain't like I suddenly just got more organized. There's just a lot of more important stuff that I'm avoiding. I haven't done my taxes since 1992. I got books from the library 33 years overdue. And that smell, it's the garbage. There's just too much to move. And I don't remember if I fed my cat ever. Kitty! I'll get to it in a minute, as soon as I am done singing you this song about procrastination. Maybe I should make a list of all the things I need to do. Now where'd I put that pen? Oh, my nails need clipping too. But before I get the clippers, I should really make some stew. Which reminds me, I should call back my friend Stu. He called in 1982. I think I might have missed his funeral too. Well, I'll get to it in a minute, as soon as I am done singing you this song about procrastination. They say you can't put it off forever, but I know that they're wrong. It won't be me doing these dishes when I'm dead and gone. And hey, who'd have thunk it? I'm almost done this song. But first maybe I'll check my phone and see what's going on. Second. There's a cat video. You see this? It's a funny cat video. The cats. You should really see this video. Oh, sorry, I'll get back to it in a minute, soon as I am done singing you this song about procrastinate. Oh, I just gotta finish this video. It's really funny. Look at the cats. Whoa! It's like a ninja cat. Wow! Cats are silly, crazy animals. You should really see this. This is great stuff. What? Oh, on the kid's head. What was I doing?
My next guest is a Swiss comedian who is currently residing in the UK. I saw a video of her on YouTube and instantly asked her to be on the podcast. She's one of the most unique people I've seen in quite some time. She is Fran Kissling. How you doing?
Hi, I'm very good. Thank you for asking.
How long have you been doing stand-up?
I have been doing stand-up for a year. It's been an enjoyable experience, and it gives me the opportunity to let other people know about Switzerland.
Is that what got you into stand-up, to raise awareness for Switzerland?
Yes. A lot of people don't even know that Switzerland exists. And it's Switzerland so small, it's not always included on maps. So it's important that people know.
How long have you been in the UK?
I have been in the UK for over 20 years now.
Wow. That's quite a long time. What made you decide to move to the UK?
I went here to study, and I thought it would also take a long time to educate people about Switzerland, because there are over 70 million people in the UK.
That's quite a lot. Yeah, that's a good opportunity for you to spread awareness.
Yes, that's what I thought.
One thing I would like to do, I saw you do this on YouTube, was your How Swiss Are You quiz. Do you mind if we do that? I would like to find out how Swiss I am.
Sure. I will ask you a series of questions. If your answer is Swiss, you get a Swiss point.
Okay.
What is the capital of Switzerland?
I don't know.
That is not a Swiss answer. Jason, are you Swiss?
No.
That also is not a Swiss answer. Imagine you have a Swiss friend and it's their birthday. Do you get them a Swedish present?
Yes.
That also is not a Swiss answer. In my home village of Oberhofen, there are two famous musicians. I would like you to name them. It's a tough question, so you get a hint. It's not me. Who are the musicians?
I have no idea.
That is not a Swiss answer. The correct answer is Paula Hofer and Adolf Stahli. Can you name a year in which Switzerland was not founded?
1977.
That is a Swiss answer. Yes. You have 1 Swiss point.
I finally got one.
I would like to give you some pointers on how to become more Swiss.
Okay.
This includes visiting Switzerland. I also have the notes to a popular folk song about not wanting a farmer's boy that I can send over to you.
Okay. I'll give you my address as soon as the show's over.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. I always wondered how Swiss I was. Now I know. Not very.
A lot of people do.
So, what are your next plans for spreading awareness about Switzerland?
I've planned a few shows in the future where I will also talk about Switzerland, assess people on how Swiss they are, give them pointers like I did to you, and repeat the process until people become more Swiss than they are.
Have you ever seen the American TV show The Amazing Race?
No, that's not broadcasted here.
Okay. It's a show where they take teams of people and they send them around the world, and whoever gets back first, they win $1 million. I think it's $500,000. I think me and you should try to be a team on The Amazing Race. We'll go around the world and we'll just try to raise awareness for Switzerland.
That sounds like a good idea.
We could do a podcast in every country we go to on the show.
I'm glad to have met someone who has the same commitment as I do.
I think it's a very good cause. I really look forward to trying to do this sometime.
Together we can make loads of people Swiss.
What's the end game? Is it to raise awareness for Switzerland, or are we trying to broaden the borders and make these people citizens?
I would like to bring Switzerland closer to other countries, but not in a geographical sense, because that would be impossible. I also think that Switzerland doesn't need too many more citizens, as it's quite small, and not everybody would fit there. But we could do it on a rotational basis. Some people could spend a bit of time in Switzerland, leave, and then other people could go and experience Switzerland.
Yeah, we have a round-robin lottery system for citizenship. I like that. We can just cycle people through. That's a good idea. I like that.
Do you have any other questions?
The last question I have for you is, what is your favorite Swiss pastime?
My favorite Swiss pastime is walking up mountains, which is also the national pastime. It's full of signs that tell you where you are and how long it will take to get from place to place. You can spend hours and hours walking in Swiss mountains.
Just reading the signs, huh?
Yes, and always knowing where you are, unless you go off route, and then you might get lost.
Do they have signs, kind of like when you're on a highway? There's a sign that says when the next rest area is, it's so many miles to this or that. Do some of the signs have something posted to where you're going to be up to the next sign in so many meters?
It is actually a bit like that.
I was hoping
it's similar to highways, but without the roadworks.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show today. It was a lot of fun talking to you. Is there anything you would like to say before we go?
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Jason. It's been an honor, and it's a good way of me making people more aware of Switzerland.
All right, guys, I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
G'day, Beej here from the BS Pod, and also newpodworldorder.com. Did you know the word incorrectly is the only word from the English language that is always spelt incorrectly?
Want to contact the show? Send an email to jason@wedon'thavecookies.com or call 929-266-9342 and leave a voicemail.
I had a lot of fun on this episode. I want to thank Ken Shamrock and Fran Kissling again for being guests on the show. After the interview, I talked to Fran, and she is officially a member of the We Don't Have Cookies family. She will be on the show from time to time to find out how Swiss guests are and to give updates on how spreading awareness of Switzerland is going. I'm also on my own personal quest to make this podcast one of the most widely available podcasts in the world. I know what you're thinking, Jason. You've said the podcast is everywhere podcasts are available. Well, I thought it was, but I forgot about the Amazon Echo. So soon the podcast will be an Alexa skill. So if you have one of those, stay tuned. I hope to have more on that in the next couple of weeks. One thing you don't have to wait for is to hear me as the new co-host of Kenny Bolin's podcast, The Bolin Alley. If you go to YouTube and search for Bolin, Bolin Alley, or look on Vince Russo's channel. As a lifelong wrestling fan, I never imagined that I would be associated with Vince Russo. It's surreal to say the least. I want to thank Kenny and Vince for the opportunity. Even if you don't like wrestling, you should watch that show. We have a lot of fun. If you have liked the podcast Facebook page, you already knew those things because I posted about them last week. If you haven't liked the Facebook page, please do that now. Go to facebook.com/WeDon'tHaveCookies. I'll also have a link to that in the show notes. I'd really appreciate it. Last week, I asked people to email in and let me know if I should keep doing the This Week's Dumbass of the Year segment or just let it go. After all the feedback, I've decided to let it go. It's been a part of the show since the beginning, but nothing lasts forever, and it's just time to move on. Some people also asked why Mama Kate hasn't been on the podcast this month. Unfortunately, something has come up, and she isn't able to do the podcast anymore. I'm going to miss her. I know you will too. She's been a big part of the podcast since it started, and I'm sad to see her go. I hate to bring up sad news on another episode of the show. It seems like that's happened all month long, but hopefully all the sad news concerning the podcast is now behind us now that January is almost over, and change is always a good thing, even if it doesn't seem like it at the time, which leads me to my next topic. I am changing the intro music. It won't be drastically different, but I want to change it up. Probably have it up by the next episode. And speaking of the next episode, comedian Sonia King will be my guest. She's a touring headlining comedian who has been on Good Morning America and The View, among other things. That's going to be a lot of fun. I am also going to try to get Dan Severn on the podcast for a couple of minutes to see if he'll be willing to face Ken Shamrock on an episode of Martial Law. You don't want to miss what's in store for the podcast in February, so if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast anywhere podcasts are available and spread the word. It's the only way the show can grow. That's it for this episode. I'll be back next Monday.
Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the show and leave a review. See you next time.
That is not a Swiss answer.